When getting off the train, our protagonist once again runs into his fiancée, realizing that he broke rule number 1, which is not meeting in public places or at the train exit. However, this was purely a coincidence. Nevertheless, this made Yui very uncomfortable, while at the same time, the protagonist didn't know what to do, whether to ignore her or go along with her. He concluded that it was simply a stroke of luck. Despite the awkwardness, they both decided to interact as usual, behaving like two people who absolutely despise each other. As night fell, they decided to go to a restaurant to rest and enjoy something delicious. There, the protagonist asked Yui if she was tired since she seemed quite exhausted. She admitted it was true but assured him it would all be over soon. Rewinding to the past, we see that Yui was deeply flustered, unsure whether to choose sample A or sample B for the sweets exhibition. Hearing her predicament, a passing girl suggested asking someone from accounting, as they are typically good with such matters. At the accounting office, our protagonist was working on his tasks when his boss suddenly asked him to help with something heavy. Unexpectedly, Yui appeared in front of him, making him think she was there to see him. However, she walked straight toward Miss Marizono. Marizono quickly accompanied Yui to test both sweet samples, eventually stating that based on her data, sample B was the better choice. Impressed by Marizono's dedication, Yui immediately agreed and thanked her sincerely for her commitment. Nevertheless, she felt a bit embarrassed and asked Marizono not to tell anyone about this, as these tasks seemed too feminine, something she wanted to avoid at all costs. It was then that Yui confessed she couldn't resist when overwhelmed by her love for such delicious things. Hearing this, Yui remembered the feelings she experiences when seeing the protagonist, telling Marizono she completely understands. This comment made the bespectacled girl doubt her, which put Yui on high alert. Yui insisted she wouldn't reveal her secret to anyone. This behavior made Marizono even more suspicious, noting that Yui was kinder and more charming than she had initially thought. Marizono then commented that Yui doesn't treat Tateshi the same way, which, of course, made Yui even more nervous about the possibility of her secret being discovered. Unexpectedly, Marizono admitted she understood why Yui treated him a bit harsher than others, because he is very demanding and serious. Hearing this, Yui couldn't stop thinking about her beloved, reflecting on how he is an incredibly kind and considerate person, which made her feel lucky to see that side of her fiancé. Surprisingly, Marizono admitted that Tateshi is a good person, because when things get tough, he always says, "It is what it is," showing he is calm and understanding. This triggered a memory for Yui. She recalled a day in the past when she accidentally dropped all her notes. Masugu suddenly appeared in front of her and helped pick up everything. From that day on, she has been hopelessly in love with him. Back in the present, Yui began to open up to Marizono, admitting that he always solves the most complicated problems and is incredibly skilled at what he does. However, as she kept talking, she almost confessed that she was in love with him. Thankfully, Marizono stopped her, saying she didn't know Tateshi well enough to speak about him so extensively. As night fell, the protagonist and his fiancée were at their apartment washing dishes. Masugu admitted to feeling tired and stiff, prompting Yui to offer him a relaxing massage to help him feel better. During this moment, he asked her why she had gone to see Marizono. Yui recounted everything that had happened and mentioned learning about his reputation thanks to Marizono. After hearing all of this, the protagonist told Yui that she had been very considerate that day. He then revealed to her that all day long she had wanted to touch him, which made her feel happy. Hey, don't think about it too much. She just wanted to hug him and be affectionate. The next day at the office, Yui began handing out a bunch of sample cookies to everyone working there, saying that this was also thanks to Marizono. After distributing them to everyone, she approached a young man, gave him a muffin, and helped him with his tasks. Surprised, the young man thanked her for everything. Meanwhile, our protagonist was being scolded by his boss, who criticized the report for having too many columns. Upon returning to his office, the women there reassured him that the deputy director was always harsh, so he shouldn't worry too much. However, during his break, the protagonist looked visibly frustrated, as the report only had 2 extra columns, something insignificant for such a well-done task. It was then that 2 young men, Karumatsu and Tamura, approached him and asked why he seemed so down. However, he chose not to share what had happened. Unexpectedly, Yui appeared before them, looking surprisingly cheerful instead of upset. She used the moment to hand out samples of her product to everyone present, while Magusu tried his best to hide his irritation from work. As expected, she also gave a muffin to him since it was part of her job. When the protagonist tasted it, he merely said it wasn't bad. This response annoyed Yui, who demanded he be honest about the flavor. Thus, he began to explain each flavor he experienced while tasting the muffin in detail, pointing out the only flaw. The chocolate left his hand slightly messy. This made Yui realize an important detail she had overlooked. After thanking him for his feedback, she left. As the evening approached, Hayakawa invited her colleagues out for drinks, saying they deserved a break after working so hard. The protagonist considered it and remembered his fiancée would be attending a work party, so he accepted to take his mind off things. At the party, Hayakawa got very drunk and made a fool of herself in front of everyone. To his surprise, Yui was also at the party. They ran into each other without prior notice. Meanwhile, two handsome young men were drinking with Tatishi, inviting another young man sitting in the corner to join. He admitted that he wasn't into such activities. Feeling uncomfortable, he pretended to take a phone call to escape the awkward situation. The protagonist noticed this and was puzzled, but the women explained that the man had transferred to their office only 2 months ago, which made him a bit reserved. Since the day Yui talked to him, however, he had opened up more and even started drinking with them occasionally. This surprised the protagonist, who began to suspect that this young man might have feelings for his fiancée. He observed his girlfriend closely, only to realize she had drunk too much and could barely stand. Drunk, she wandered away from the group, and Masugu decided to check on her, discovering she was about to vomit. Despite her protests, saying she didn't want anyone to worry about her, Masugu helped her by rubbing her back to make her feel better. She kept insisting he stop, worried someone might see them, but he refused, saying it was normal to help someone in that condition. Taking advantage of the moment, she grabbed his hand, saying it felt cool and soothing, before falling asleep on his lap. Suddenly, the shy young man from earlier, Somai, appeared in the bathroom, apologizing for the awkward situation and saying he hadn't left yet. This put the protagonist on high alert, unsure of what to say. Then, Somai unexpectedly asked a shocking question. Were they secretly dating? He promised not to tell anyone, leaving the protagonist with no choice but to admit the truth. The next day, our protagonist decides to go on a date with his fiancée, but as usual, they must wear face masks. This time, however, Yui feels much more anxious than before, worrying that Somai might have been too drunk to remember what he was told. Things escalated to the point where Yui considered confronting and cornering Somei to silence him, but the protagonist calmed her down, assuring her that Somei didn't seem like the kind of person to reveal secrets. Still, both carried the internal fear of being fired since the company strictly prohibited romantic relationships between co-workers outside of work. This deeply concerns Masugu, as he realizes how hard Yui has worked in the competition, and he doesn't want her to lose her job over a simple romantic relationship. At the same time, Yui shares the same sentiment, implying that she doesn't want his reputation to suffer because of her. However, the protagonist reassures her, saying that everything will be fine and remain the same as before. The next day at the office, he feels incredibly nervous about what Yui told him, not wanting to risk his reputation. Unexpectedly though, this time the deputy director approved his work on the first try. Feeling motivated, the protagonist decides to take a break, during which he runs into Somai. When Somai turns to look at him, he seems to realize he's become involved in a serious secret. Despite this, Somai doesn't understand why they are so determined to keep their relationship a secret from everyone. After an extensive explanation from the protagonist, Somai admits that by keeping their relationship under wraps, the work environment does indeed feel much better. The protagonist asks Somai not to reveal their secret to anyone. A bit perplexed, Somei agrees, saying he'll keep quiet only because he owes Yui a lot. Besides, he doesn't think they'll actually get married or anything. As the protagonist leaves the building, he reflects on what Somei said, thinking how wonderful it would be to marry Yui someday, but he knows he still has a long way to go before that. If you've made it this far into the video, don't forget to write the word exquisito in the comment section. Thank you so much, and see you in the next video.